Good afternoon. My name is Mark Eilers, and today is July 14th, 2024. This video is my code review for the Milestone 1 portion of my project for the Computer Science Course 499 Capstone at Southern New Hampshire University. In this course, we were asked to identify several different artifacts of a project that we have completed throughout the computer science program, align those projects to one of three categories, and provide an enhancement to demonstrate our learned skills. These three categories include software design and engineering, algorithms and data structures, and databases. The goal of this video will be to explain the initial functions of the projects, comment on the overall code and its initial alignment to standards, and provide a description on the enhancement plan. So without further ado, let's go ahead and review my first artifact. The first artifact I have selected aligns with the software design and engineering portion of my capstone project. The artifact is titled Creating a Texture Pyramid and was originally created in my CS 330 Computer Graphics and Visualization course. In this assignment, students were tasked with rendering a three-dimensional space that included a textured pyramid using OpenGL. As we analyze the code, we can see that it illustrates proper or appropriate coding standards. There are some great inline comments that explain exactly what the section of the code is accomplishing, as well as naming conventions for our variables. As we can see up at the very top, we have comments that are explaining what each of these include statements are meant to do, as well as inline comments that are explaining what each section of our code does. As we can see here, the naming conventions for our variables are appropriate. We have things that are going to be creating the shader program and destroying the shader program. We have ones that are going to be creating the mesh and destroying the mesh. We have ones that are going to be creating and resizing our window and processing input and so on and so forth. As we continue to scroll down, we can see that there are different inline comments that are explaining exactly what each of these sections of the code are trying to accomplish. The vertex shader source code can be seen here, whereas fragment shader source code can be seen below that. As we continue to work our way down, we can identify different things that are going to be implemented in this program to essentially render a three-dimensional pyramid. As we can see here, we have a section that is talking about loading textures, and in this case, my texture that was loaded was a carpet texture, as well as additional kind of text file names and things like that that are going to be applied to our pyramid so that way it could look the way that we want it to look like. Continue to work our way down. We have different ways that we are going to be creating our program or showing the window. We have things that are going to be indicating the window size and whether or not the window is going to be failed if it does not work appropriately and things like that. As we also continue to work our way down, we can see that we do get into a point where it talks about the vertices and positions of our triangles that we use to make our pyramid. So we have source code right here that is talking about the pyramid itself, as well as its texturing coordinates to tell the program exactly where to place the texture that our program is going to be using. Now, in the very end portions of this code, we have destroying the mesh. So this is going to take place once we have finally finished playing our program or when we decide to close out of it, as well as a couple of additional things that are going to allow the program to run as smoothly as it is supposed to. If we go up to the top part here with this play button, once we hit play, a window is then created that is going to display a three-dimensional pyramid. As we can see, the pyramid is displayed using the carpet texture as indicated before, but the pyramid is hard to identify and no other features are included. I am unable to move around the scene and the lighting for this program is poor. This overall contributes to the image being overall hard to read and kind of understand what's happening here. I know that this is meant to be a pyramid, but somebody who's looking at this might identify it as something differently. So, while this project was introduced to texturing objects, my enhancement involves me expanding on this initial design. I plan to incorporate all key aspects that the course covered, including adding shaded sources, so that way we can have differing levels of light to indicate our pyramid a little bit better, as well as incorporating source code for mouse and keyboard controls. This overall will improve the lighting, texture, and movement around the scene. This will give the user ability to move around the scene, making the pyramid more interactive and easier to identify. Essentially, my plan is to enhance the assignment so that it is up to the standards of the final project of that course. So again, I am planning on making source code that is going to allow the user to move around the scene using both mouse and keyboard controls. For the mouse controls, that involves moving up, down, left, and right with their mouse, as well as scrolling features that is going to zoom in and out of the object, and using keyboard features for W, A, S, and D to allow the user to move again up, down, left, and right. Finally, again, that lighting source is going to provide additional shading to this pyramid so that way we can actually see and identify a three-dimensional image. Lastly, my plan is to change the source code here just a little bit so that way instead of having a carpeted textured pyramid, my texture is going to be changed to make it look like an actual pyramid that you might find somewhere else. Okay, so for this very first one, we are essentially lining it up to that first category where we are trying to provide an enhancement that is going to demonstrate my ability for software design and engineering. This again is going to include appropriate inline comments as well as appropriate naming conventions, so that way my program is easily maintainable through future iterations of this program. Now, as we move on to the next alignment or the next artifact, this next artifact is going to align with the algorithms and data structure section of my Capstone project. For this project, we're going to go down here. This artifact was the major final project of the zoo application for my IT 145 Foundation in Application Development course. In this course, students were introduced to Java coding and were asked to create an application that would allow customers to access and check out different service animals. Customers were given the option of either a service dog or a monkey that the company would then offer, or that the company offers. For this project, we can see that good coding standards were again applied. So as we look through the different classes above, we have a dog class, we have a driver class, we have a monkey class, and we have a rescue animal Java class. In the dog class, we can see again that there are appropriate comments that are talking about our variables that are being used, as well as the accessor and mutator that was applied for the dog class. We can also again see that same kind of thing or same concept for our monkey class, where we have appropriate naming conventions and again the appropriate inline comments to identify what is exactly happening, and within our driver class as well. We can see that in the driver class we have appropriate inline comments as well as different sections of the code that is telling it what it is supposed to do. Since customers were given the option of either a service dog or a monkey, they have to have the ability to click on certain menu aspects that are going to allow them to select the animal that they would like. For this project, we can see again that good coding standards were applied. Each of the portions of the code have appropriate variables and comments, and the code is separated into different classes. There is a driver class that is in charge of the overall project, a rescue animal class, dog class, and monkey class. By separating the code like this, it makes the software more manageable and pliable for later enhancements. To start, we can see that in the rescue animal class, which is this first one right here, the rescue animal class contains the private variable and constructors for the program. It's important to understand that we use private variables in this case because we don't want our customers to have access to things that they don't necessarily need access to. This private variable is going to be things that only we as the engineers are going to be able to manipulate instead of the customer. While this section of code is simple, I will say, and basic, I would like to enhance the inline comments here so that way we can see exactly what each constrictor does. For example, I've identified down here in my initial programmer in my initial project here that each of these were the constrictors, but you have to read each of the inline things here to identify what's happening. I would like to include comments with these so that way we know exactly what each of these constructors are for. For example, we have one that is going to allow us to get the name of our animal. We have one that is going to allow us to set the name, to get the animal type, so whether that's a monkey or a dog, to set the animal type, so if we want to choose a dog or a monkey, to get the gender, if we choose a male or a female animal, to set that gender, to get the age, and again to set that age, to get the weight, to set the weight, to get the acquisition date, or the day that we're going to be getting it, and setting that acquisition date, to get the acquisition location, so where we're getting it from, as well as setting the location, and reserving that animal as well. We can see that there are additional other ones here that are talking about the training statuses and things like that, but again, without those inline comments, it might not be as easily to identify for an individual if they're just reading this code and not really sure what's exactly happening here. So one of my plans to enhance this is to add in those inline comments so that way we can identify exactly what is happening. Additionally, there are animal classes made for each of the monkey and dogs that can be checked out by the users. So we can see here is that we have the dog Java class, which is talking about anything that we could want for the dog. It does extend the rescue animal class, so by breaking it up like this, it is easier to maintain and modify. But it is extending this rescue class, so we're using the constructors here in my dog class. But then on top of that, we have public variables that are using appropriate, again, naming conventions. Public variables are going to be variables that our public has access to. So things like setting the name, if they want to set the name, set the breed, set the gender, set the age, the weight, the accusation date, the location where we're getting our animal, its training status, its setting if it's reserved or not, and then what country it's going to be in service for. This is going to allow our users to essentially customize their experience so that way they can get an animal that is going to be meeting their needs. And in this particular case, using the dog class, these people are going to be able to get the dogs that they are interested in. Again, as we move down below, we see that we have an accessor methods with public strings for getting a breed and setting our breed once again. If we also again take a look at the monkey class, we see a very similar kind of thing that was set up from the dog class. In the monkey class, we have public variables, again, that the monkey is going to extend that rescue animal class. We have a few different variables that are private, again, things that we're trying to prevent our public from seeing, but also things that are going to be public, things that we want to be able to let our customers to, again, set the name or pick the name, gender, age, and so on and so forth. But then on top of that, we do additionally update the monkey class just a little bit and separating it from the dog class. You see, for the dogs, for the most part, you select a breed and you get the breed that you want. But when we take a look at monkeys, we have different types of monkeys that you might be interested in. And those different types of monkeys might have different tail lengths that you could be interested in, about their height and body sizes. So that way, if you're living in a confined area where you need a smaller monkey, you can get a smaller monkey. Or if you're in an area where you need a bigger monkey, you can get a bigger monkey. Again, additionally here kind of enhancing the user experience. Okay, so we can see that there are a few different things between the dog class and the monkey class that are similar and that they are extending from that rescue class. Now, as we work our way to our very last one here, we have our driver class. Our driver class is the last thing here that is going to be kind of the program that is initializing everything. Okay, it's going to be using things from that dog class, that monkey class, the rescue animal class, and actually making the program that our user can then have access to. So, as we can see here, there are a few different things that the program is going to be outputting. It is going to be outputting if they pick a dog here, the type of breed, if they want male or female, the age in years, the body weight of the dog, and so on and so forth. Essentially, all of those things that we had outlined in the dog class, they're being prompted here for the user to be able to select and pick, so that way they can, again, essentially customize their experience and find a dog or an animal that is going to be best suiting their needs. As we continue to work our way down, we can see for our new dog, if we're adding it into the system, we're including those same variables, the name, breed, gender, age, weight, so on and so forth. With this part here being that we are adding a dog to that list. We then also see down below we have good inline comments that are talking about how this source of code is looking at completing the intake of a new monkey. So if we're adding a new monkey into a system, what is the name of that monkey? Is it already in the system or not? Is it a male or a female? Much like the dog that we saw, how old is it? What is its weight? But we can also see here that we've also included that species type. Remember that we talked about how in the monkey class, we made a special section to talk about the species of the monkey, so that way, again, users could kind of customize if they were looking for a particular type of monkey or not. We can also, again, see that with its monkey tail length and its height and its body length, just so that way, again, customers can identify the appropriate things. Essentially, what is happening here is that in the very first half of this program, this is going to allow users, and in this case, people who are going to be entering in animal information, to basically put in the appropriate data for our creature, for our service animal. And then as we continue to work our way down, we then have the section of the code that is going to complete the reservation of an animal. So this is going to prompt users to pick whether or not they would like a dog or a monkey, and then based off of that, other prompts are going to be popping up. So we can see what country the service animal is going to be in. Now, as we also can, again, work our way down, we see that if we choose the monkey class, that we are then going to be prompted with monkeys that are available that are on our database or our list. We can also again see that with this else if statement, if we choose our dog class, then we're going to be able to reserve a dog. In other words, we're using appropriate loop statements here to iterate over our list, which at the very top of this, we have our array list for our dogs and our monkeys that are going to be able to essentially find the animal that our customer is looking for. Using these loop statements are a great example of appropriate inline coding standards because we're going to be able to move our way through that array list. So again, that way we can find the animal that we are interested in. Now with that said, I think that this is a very good kind of basic or very good starting point. And in my personal opinion, I really liked this project. It gave me an opportunity to start working with a new language of coding, that of Java, that I had never had experience with before. However, after analyzing this code, we can see that there are some issues that are going to be popping up. Namely, there really is no distinction between different users. As we can identify in the driver class, we have a section that is going to allow a person to enter in animals that are going to be intaking those animals. And then we have another section that is going to allow users to check out the animals. But there really is no security measures that have been put into place here that are going to be preventing this kind of like cross credentials. Essentially, my enhancement plan for this project is to provide credentials to allow only certain people access to certain parts of our database so that way we can control who or what gets access to what. This is really, really essential in any kind of programming because we want to be able to limit or control who has access to what. For example, if we have a standard run-of-the-mill customer who's coming in and wanting to check out a monkey or check out a dog, we don't need them to be able to have the ability to input new monkeys and input new dogs. That could cause a whole lot of problems where, because they don't know what kind of animal we're putting in, that it could result in a incomplete database or a database that is not up to date or has wrong information regarding an animal. We want to try to limit that ability from occurring. So in my enhancement plan, I want to add in that security measure to check for those credentials. Essentially, at the very end of the day here, we are going to be updating this project to include credentials to prevent unauthorized users from accessing certain parts of our program that we don't want them to. Okay. Finally, for my last artifact, we're going to be taking a look at the enhancement 3 artifact, which is going to be incorporating databases. And that is going to be found right here. So in this program, we had a couple things that were going on. This is a Python application that was designed to create a web interface using the Dash Web app framework and integrating Dash component modules for displaying animal data from animal shelters. This includes results that are filtered based on user criteria. This application was developed during my CS340 client server development course. And for this, we were choosing Python as my development environment or my IDE and using Python as the programming language. I plan in this case to design and develop a useful enhancement to this application. I will accomplish this by implementing an additional collection or users into my database to handle user accounts. My goal is to align my work with all of the course outcomes that are related to databases. In this case, we can see that the dashboard is configured to work with the MongoDB, or the Mongo database, on a local host, granting permission to anyone within the same network. If we take a look at the animal shelter pie frame here, we can see that there are a few things that are occurring. We have a class here that is extending from our animal shelters. We also talk about how we're importing, again, the pie Mongo and Mongo client and our object ID. But where we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this is the methods that we're using to essentially essentially create this database. In other words, we're incorporating the concepts of CRUD. CRUD is a concept or a development way where we are going to create data. So in this first section, we are creating data. We are also then going to be reading our data. We are then going to be updating our data. And then finally, we're going to be deleting data if we need to do so. As we can see in this very beginning part here for the Python code, we do have appropriate naming conventions and really good inline comments that are informing the user exactly what is happening here. In the very beginning intro statements, we are importing the necessary things from PyMongo and our object ID, and then as we continue to work our way down, we can identify that this section here is specifically dealing with the create section of our CRUD method. We have our reading section, and then we have our updating and our delete. We could also see that we are using appropriate if and else statements. So if the data is not none, then the self database is going to insert data. In other words, we're going to be inserting data as a dictionary and then returning true. If we find that this is not the case, so if there is no data, so this is saying if data is not none, but if there is no data, then we're going to be printing out an output statement that is going to say nothing to save because the data parameter is empty. So this is going to inform the user that whatever it is that they were trying to update, or if they were running something in there, that the program is not recognizing it, and that's something to kind of keep into consideration. Now, as we work our way down, we do see that we have the read section of this. So again, if the data is not none, if we have selected something, then we are going to find that data from our database, and then we are going to read it. However, if we do find that there is an error with that, then it's going to inform us that there is nothing to read because, again, the data parameter is empty. We then have the one for updating. So if we decide that we need to update something from our database, then we're going to be able to do that through here. Or if we were going to update something but we have not selected anything to update, then it's going to inform us of that. And then again, finally, for our databases, sometimes data becomes obsolete and it is no longer needed, and sometimes we need to delete that information. So in this case, we have an if-else statement that is going to say if we have some kind of data that we have identified and that data has matched something, then we can delete it. We are going to delete one. Or if we haven't selected anything, it's again going to let us know that there is no data that has been selected. So the whole point of this very first beginning Py code was to create, was to read, was to update, and to delete files within our database. As we continue to work our way through, we then have our next section of code that is then going to allow us to essentially create the application that is going to access this database. We can see that in the very beginning here, we are importing all of the appropriate things, again, using those really good inline comments to identify what each section is for. We are importing all the necessary libraries and things to essentially run our program the way that we need to. We can also see that with this database, we had accessed it as an authorized user, as somebody who has the ability to manipulate the data that is found within the database. We have set our username and password for whoever is going to be using that data manipulation within the database animal shelter. Continuing our way down, we have a few different things that are going to then create our logo. So when we create this application, we want to incorporate the Grazio Salvor logo, which is this dog image that we can then see to make sure that we are on the correct page, as well as the application layout. In the application layout, we have different things that are going to allow us to filter our options. So in this case, we're talking about animals that we want to select for a rescue type of mission. Let's say that we need to have an animal that's specifically good at water rescue. We want to be able to manipulate that. If we need to find animals that are mountain or wilderness or rescue animals, same thing with disasters. Or if we need to reset any of our values, then we can do that as well. Continue to work our way down. We are building up a different type of table. In this case, we were building a table that allows 10 rows per page, starting on page 0 with columns and things like that, that are going to be able to provide information about the animals that we are going to select. Essentially, what the point of this section of the code was to create the actual functioning application that that was going to incorporate a user section and a password section to allow our authorized user access to our database, so that way they can manipulate the data within that database. Again, we have things for water rescue, mountain wilderness, disasters, and if we need to reset our filters. So in this case, we're using appropriate if statements where we're saying if we have selected the water application, then we can choose our animal type dog, and then it's going to display information about our animal of our choice. So we can again find that we are just essentially trying to create an application that is going to allow us to access our data and display that information appropriately. We can see here that if we have a map style, this last section here is actually taking a look at GPS coordination, where in the GPS coordinates we can have a specific location for our app to start from. Same thing up here where we're using a callback where we're looking at map ID and essentially creating a GPS coordinate location for our program. Now, additionally, as we can see that there are good inline comments aligning to proper industry standards that explains each section of the code. However, while there are a lot of great things that are happening with this project, I will say that security is majorly lacking. For the last section of this enhancement plan, I plan to enhance this artifact by developing a security mindset that anticipates adversarial exploits in software architecture and designs to expose potential vulnerables, to mitigate design flaws, and to ensure privacy and enhance security of data and resources. I will achieve this outcome by implementing password hashing that creates a secure password storage function before adding it to the database, protecting user credentials. My planned authentication system includes checks for duplicate usernames. The passwords are valid against the stored hash passwords in the database, stopping unauthorized access. I plan to include a limited access feature, only allowing registered users to have access to the Add Animal button component to prevent misuse that could overload the animal database with unrelated information. This showcases my ability to develop a security mindset in both aspects of design and implementation. This is because I plan to create measures to stop unauthorized access and protect user data to ensure that privacy and security of my application. Essentially, much like my second project or my second artifact, we are kind of lacking in security, where we want to be able to control who has exactly what access to our application or to our program. So with that said, this is the end of my coding review. Overall, we can see that there are some pretty good inline comments, with the exception of maybe a few little enhancements here or there. But for the most part, we do find that we have some good things that are happening. In my first artifact, we are going to be updating the way that we are able to move around that scene, so that way we can see our pyramid a lot better, including enhancements to both texture and lighting. That way it mimics the final project of that course. In my second